This is the Roman army in formation. And this is the Roman army amid our forests and swamps.
They said Rome could never fall. An empire that crushed kingdoms, bent nations to its will, and stretched from the burning sands of Africa to the cold forests of Europe. But deep beyond the Rhine River, in the dark, endless woods of Germania, there were people who refused to kneel. Wild tribes, scattered and fierce, who vanished into the mist when Rome tried to tame them. To the Romans, they were barbarians. To the forest, they were its children. It was here that Rome's arrogance would meet its greatest nightmare. The year was 9 AD. Emperor Augustus ruled the known world. His armies had conquered Gaul, crushed Egypt, and stood on the edge of Germania, the empire's newest frontier. He sent one of his most trusted men, Publius Quinctilius Varus, to bring Roman order to these lands. But in the shadows of those forests walked another man, Arminius. Born a German, raised in Rome, trained as a Roman officer. To Varus, he was a loyal ally, a bridge between empire and tribe. But behind that loyalty burned something else. A memory of home. A hatred buried deep beneath the Roman armor he wore. As summer faded, reports reached Varus of a small tribal uprising. Arminius offered to guide the legions through the forest to put it down. 3 Roman legions, nearly 20,000 men, followed him into the mist. The trees grew thicker. The sky disappeared behind a ceiling of branches. The rain began to fall. The path narrowed. And still they marched, trusting the man who led them. But Arminius was not guiding them to war. He was guiding them to their graves. What awaited in those dark woods would become one of Rome's greatest disasters. A nightmare so complete that even the emperor himself would never forget it. The Roman legions moved deeper into Germania, confident, disciplined, unstoppable. For Rome, this was just another campaign, another march to remind the tribes who ruled the world.
Arminius had already united the Germanic tribes in secret. The Cherusci, the Bructeri, the Marsi, sworn enemies, now standing together for the first time. All waiting for his signal. All waiting for the Romans to march deep enough into the forest that escape would be impossible. He trusted Arminius completely, even when small warnings reached him. A missing patrol, a trail gone cold, a village suddenly empty. He dismissed them all. How could anyone dare attack Rome? As the summer rains began to fall, Arminius rode ahead, promising to return with more allied warriors. Varus nodded and allowed him to go. He didn't realize he had just let his executioner disappear into the trees. That night, thunder rolled over the camp, and rain began to pour. The soldiers laughed, drank, and sang Roman songs beneath the storm. They didn't know it, but the forest was listening. And when morning came, it would answer. Morning came with mist, thick, pale, endless. The Roman legions formed their columns, the sound of armor and marching boots echoing through the trees. 3 legions, 20,000 men, moving in perfect order, banners high, shields gleaming in the weak light. But as they entered the forest, the order began to break. The ground turned to mud beneath the pounding rain. The road narrowed, winding between steep hills and twisting roots. The wagons slipped, the horses stumbled, and the ranks stretched thin. Too thin. Still, Varus pressed forward. He had no reason to fear.
Rome had marched through deserts and mountains. What could a forest do? But this was no ordinary forest. It seemed alive. The trees grew tighter, darker, heavier with every mile. The rain became relentless, blurring vision and soaking weapons. And the silence was wrong. Scouts vanished. Messengers didn't return. The trail they followed began to disappear beneath the mud. Yet still they marched, one step after another, deeper and deeper into the green labyrinth. Then, without warning, it began. A scream. A spear flew from the shadows, striking a centurion through the neck. Then another, and another. The forest erupted with sound. Horns, war cries, the clash of metal.
Arrows and javelins rained down from above, vanishing as quickly as they came. The Romans tried to form their lines, but there was no space. The trees were too close, the path too narrow. Their shields couldn't lock, their formations shattered before they even began. The legion, Rome's greatest weapon, was useless here. They fought blind, striking at ghosts between the trees. The air filled with mud, blood, and the cries of dying men. And through it all, the Germans moved like shadows, striking, vanishing, striking again. Varus shouted for order, for discipline, for Rome. But Rome was gone. The empire's might was lost in a storm of wood and rain. And somewhere in the darkness, unseen but listening, Arminius smiled. The trap had closed, and the forest had begun to feast. The forest was alive with chaos. What had begun as a march had turned into a nightmare. Rain poured in sheets, turning the paths to rivers of mud. Armor that once shone proudly in the sun now dragged the soldiers down, each step heavier than the last. Banners that once fluttered above the legions now hung soaked and torn, clinging to the trees like ghosts. For the first time in generations, Roman soldiers were not fighting to conquer. They were fighting to survive. Varus tried to rally his men. Trumpets blared, officers shouted commands, but the forest swallowed every sound. Formations collapsed. The legions, once symbols of perfect order, had become scattered bands of frightened men, trapped in a maze that seemed to close in around them. And then, the unthinkable happened. From the shadows emerged riders, Germanic warriors painted in mud and blood, their faces marked with fury. At their head rode Arminius, no longer in Roman armor, no longer pretending. The man who had sworn loyalty to Rome now raised his spear high and screamed a single word that echoed through the forest. Freedom. It was the signal. Thousands of Germanic warriors poured from the woods, striking from every direction. They didn't fight for territory or gold. They fought for vengeance. The Romans, weighed down by armor and panic, had no chance. The narrow path became a slaughter ground. Horses screamed as arrows found their marks. Men slipped in the mud, crushed beneath their comrades. The legions tried to retreat, but where could they go? Every trail led deeper into the forest, every escape blocked by trees and ambush. Supplies burned, weapons broke, the wounded begged for mercy and received none. Varus realized the truth. Arminius had never been his ally. He had been his executioner from the very beginning. For 3 days the Romans fought and fell. Each night the screams faded into silence, replaced by the crackle of fires and the distant chants of Germanic warriors celebrating their revenge. By the second day, the Roman column was shattered. By the third, it was gone.
For 3 endless days, the storm raged over the Teutoburg Forest. The Romans fought, not for victory, but for breath. Every hill, every tree, every patch of ground had become an enemy. The Germanic warriors struck like ghosts, unseen, relentless, merciless. They knew the terrain, the rivers, the choke points. They didn't fight in open fields or noble duels. They struck from behind trees, from the fog.
from the mud beneath the Romans' feet. And each attack tore another piece from the legions that had once ruled the world. Men slipped in the sludge, dragging each other down. Shields splintered, swords dulled, discipline vanished. The eagle standards, symbols of Roman pride, were lost one by one, swallowed by the forest. And with each fallen eagle, the morale of the legions broke further. Varus tried to regroup his men, forming a last defensive circle on a small hill. The wounded lay in heaps, clutching at their comrades, begging for help that never came. Rain poured over them all, turning the ground into a grave of mud and blood. Arminius watched from a distance, his plan complete, his vengeance fulfilled. When the Germanic tribes attacked the final Roman camp, there was no strategy left, only chaos. The cries of men mixed with thunder. The earth shook with the fury of battle. And as the last cohort fell, silence returned, heavy and final. Varus, broken and bleeding, looked at the destruction around him. 3 legions, gone. The pride of Rome, buried beneath the trees of a foreign land. Unable to bear the shame, he drew his sword and fell upon it, choosing death over capture. The few survivors who escaped told stories that no one in Rome believed, of ambushes, of storms, of betrayal. But when they returned without their standards, without their brothers, without their commander, Rome knew. The empire's greatest army had been erased. 20,000 soldiers, gone without trace. The forest that had swallowed them would never give them back. For days, the Germanic warriors celebrated among the dead. The spirits of those legions are said to march still, lost, proud, and silent. The empire trembled, and in that trembling, the myth of Rome's invincibility finally broke.
Subscribe to this channel for more stories like this.